Madam Chair, we're back on the air whenever you're ready.
Let's start. Except that we need our commissioners back.
Oh. Madam Chair, would you like me to just read the item into the record for the moment?
Yeah. Why don't we proceed with that? Is Mr. Farini here? There we go. Yes,
Great.
Please proceed, David.
Great. The following is a hearing on the request of Robert Ramey, property owner, to consider case number 19 RRM 3, application filed on October 22nd, 2019, and to determine that the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to section 15270 of the state guidelines for implementation of the California Environmental Quality Act.
Thank you very much. That means that we would go directly to our ex parte and site visit disclosures. Does any commissioner want to do that? I'll start since I'm already speaking. Is that I met with Mr. Ramey last Friday, and that's the only ex parte communications I've had. Commissioner Park?
Yes, and I also met with Mr. Ramey at the property and toured his house that he built himself, by the way. But I can't remember when I did that. It was after the first hearing, quite some time ago. But anyway, I did that. And I think it's important for us to share at some point, obviously not right now, what it is we saw. I'm always a little concerned. We have these ex parte visits and we get information. It kind of somehow needs to get in the public record if it's something we base our decisions on. But anyway, that's my disclosure.
Thank you. Okay, not seeing anybody else raise their hand, then we would move to our staff presentation. And is Ms. Harris, I don't see her on camera, but I know she's there somewhere, right?
Good morning, Chair Bradley, members of the commission. My name is Tess Harris, and I'll be presenting the Ramey recorded map modification, which is case 19 RMM 3. So the request before you today is for a recorded map modification for the property shown here on slide 2, which is the project site is Starred, which is located at 820 Cathedral Vista Lane. It's near Foothill Road and North La Cumbre Road. This is a zoomed in aerial image of the parcel. The parcel is about half an acre. It's zoned 8R1, which has an 8,000 square foot net minimum lot and building site area. The project request is to strike condition number 15 of the conditions of approval recorded with tentative parcel map 14432. And condition number 15 states, with the exception of driveway access and perimeter fencing walls, no development, including grading, shall be permitted outside of the building envelope. So again, this parcel was created through a tentative parcel map that was approved by the Santa Barbara County Planning Commission in March of 1998. The lot split divided one legal parcel into two parcels, as you can see on this slide. Parcel A, I believe, is the lot that has an existing single-family dwelling owned by Mr. Ramey, and then Parcel B is the vacant lot, which is the subject of this hearing today. You can also see the building envelope that's outlined on this slide. So the building envelope, per the staff report from the tentative parcel map in 1998, was proposed to prohibit development in the southeast portion of the subject parcel due to the presence of slopes that meet or exceed 20% grade. And this slide here just shows what occurred at the Planning Commission hearing. I also included as an attachment to the staff report the audio from that hearing that identified that this condition 15 was added to further clarify what would and wouldn't be allowed within the building envelope. So this aerial is facing east. It shows the existing site conditions of 820 Cathedral Vista Lane, and you can see how the existing lawn area resembles a shape that's similar to that of the recorded building envelope. The envelope was set back about 75 feet from the top of bank of the existing tributary. and it results in a building area of approximately 8,216 square feet. So it meets the 8,000 square foot requirement. This aerial is looking west. It also demonstrates the slope topography of the parcel, specifically in the southeast area where slopes meet or exceed the 20% grade. And then the next photos also demonstrate the site characteristics. So this photo, which faces south-southeast, provides an understanding of kind of the existing conditions of the parcel. The property that you see in the site in the photo is a neighboring property. I believe it's addressed as 825 Cathedral Vista Lane. And then the tree line that's shown on the left side of the photo identifies where the topography becomes steeper than the flat grass area, and that's the flat grass area generally is the area that's the building envelope. And then this photo is another view of the property facing north towards 830 Cathedral Vista Lane. That's the parcel A with the existing single-family dwelling that I believe Mr. Ramey owns. And then again, you can see this large grass flat area that exists on parcel B, which is the subject property. So again, condition number 15, which was put on tentative parcel map 14432, was specifically recorded with the parcel map to clarify the type of minimal development that can occur outside of the building envelope due to the topography on the lot. It's a standard condition that we do put on projects that go through a subdivision, particularly those that have grading or biological or other issues related to our policies or related to CEQA. So additionally, there's currently a reasonable use of the land with the recorded building envelope, and there's no demonstrated need to remove condition 15 from the conditions of approval, also without scientific reports. So we don't have a biological report or a slope stability analysis that would support removing this condition. The project as proposed is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan with a number of policies, including the Eastern Goleta Valley Community Plan. The proposed project is exempt from environmental review under CEQA pursuant to 15270, which is the section for projects which are disapproved. Due to the inconsistency with the comprehensive plan policies, staff recommends that the commission take the following actions. Make the required findings for denial of the project as specified in attachment A of the Planning Commission staff report, including CEQA findings. Determine that the denial of the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to section 15270, included as attachment B, and deny case number 19 RMM 3. Staff is available to answer any questions at this time that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. I have some questions, but let's go to Commissioner Park.
But I'm, oops.
Go ahead.
I'm glad to go after you. It's your district. Would you rather go
No,
first?
it's okay. Let's go out. You were there first, John.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Harris, I know this wasn't originally your project. You've kind of had to take this over. But do you know why Mr. Ramey wants to delete condition number 15?
Commissioner Park, through the chair, it's a good question. There is a project that's currently in process as a land use permit from 2000. I believe it came in 2016, and it's for a new single-family dwelling and garage on the lot. It's been unclear to staff, though, that have been processing the recorded map modification, what exactly is encroaching outside of the building envelope. I believe we were told some hardscape, and it's unclear if the foundation contains any over excavation, which would encroach into the beyond the building envelope. We don't have that information. Same with retaining walls. We're unclear if there are any retaining walls that would be included that are not considered fence or perimeter walls.
Do you know why there's nothing in the staff report telling us why Mr. Ramey wants to make this change?
Commissioner Park, through the chair, we did ask Mr. Ramey why this change was being requested, and he did not provide any further information and requested that we come to your commission instead for a hearing.
Okay, let me go on with my other questions. Does the building envelope go away if this condition 15 is removed?
Commissioner Park, through the chair, no, the building envelope would not go away unless that was a request of the applicant, and the only request that we received was the removal of condition 15. So condition 15 provides information that's relevant to the building envelope, but this request would not take that building envelope away.
So the building envelope would still confine, the major development to where it is, right?
Commissioner Park, through the chair, yes, that's correct. The building envelope would still exist, so development would need to occur within the building envelope. Condition 15 provides clarification to staff for what type of work could exist outside of the building envelope, such as the driveway or fencing and walls. And then it also includes information that no development, including grading, could exist outside of the building envelope. And it's challenging for staff that don't have a condition like this because sometimes it's unclear whether grading can occur within or outside of a building envelope. And so that's part of the reason why we are recommending that it remain on the parcel map.
Just a little bit more, and we'll get down to specifics. If you've got your staff report handy, right?
Commissioner Park, yes, I do.
So let me direct your attention to the top at page 6. And there's a statement there that says the land use permit application is currently still under review due to outstanding revision requests by the case planner, including clarification regarding proposed development, i.e. drainage infrastructure outside the building envelope, which I guess is kind of the core of this thing. What's the outstanding request you have about the drainage infrastructure? Could you kind of explain that a little bit, that statement?
Commissioner Park, through the chair, sure. So I actually spoke with the case planner for this 16 LUP this week to get further clarification. The application for the land use permit is still incomplete, so there are additional items that are needed. I believe the applicant submitted a grading plan, but the grading plan doesn't have existing or proposed contours, so that's something that we would still need. There are some plans that are not legible, and then I believe there is some other infrastructure that's currently located outside of the building envelope that's proposed under that LUP, which is why this recorded map modification is before you. But when speaking with the planner for the land use permit, it's still unclear whether the foundation system that's been proposed would include over excavation, which would extend beyond the building envelope. And then it's unclear if retaining walls would exist outside of the building envelope. And then it's also unclear whether there would be some drainage infrastructure that would go towards that creek habitat or stream habitat area that would also extend beyond the building envelope.
So one last follow-up. Does condition number 15 bar drainage infrastructure outside the building envelope?
Yeah.
Commissioner Park, through the chair, if the drainage infrastructure included any grading, so if it was underground, then it would not be permitted outside of the building envelope.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So let me do a couple of questions as well. I really appreciate staff's work on this report, especially picking it up from another planner. I certainly appreciate the applicant's thorough review of everything in the record. And I just had a couple questions. The CEQA document on the original parcel map, I believe what happened is there was not a deep and thorough consideration of geologic impacts or grading impacts or biological implications related to Santa Creek. And yet that is what was carried forward with the parcel map. So can you, Ms. Harris, sort of explain a little bit more about how sometimes a condition restricts a project build out if you don't have all the CEQA or the technical studies on file in advance. That's my understanding of kind of how it went with Mr. Baca's analysis way back there in the 80s, and the addition of condition 15, which, by the way, I think is a fairly standard condition on a lot of parts, right? So can you help us with the previous CEQA review for the parcel map?
Chair Bridley, Commissioners, sure. So we did find a negative declaration. It's 87 ND 17 for the property, which occurred, and I'm just pulling it up, and that negative declaration includes a mitigation measure. It includes two mitigation measures, and one of them is that the applicant shall have the building envelope on parcel B recorded on the final map. So a number of areas were reviewed during that negative declaration. There's a discussion on aesthetics, transportation, circulation, public services and fire hazards, utilities, flooding and drainage, groundwater resources, geologic processes. And then at the time of prior approval for the tentative parcel map and the staff report, the county geologist, Brian Baca, had stated that with the building envelope, the project did not create any geological hazards which would prevent new development to occur on the subject parcel. And that is likely because this area, essentially they're confining development to a particular area on the property which either didn't have a geologic report or other report done, or where they found that there are issues and development shouldn't occur in that location. Again, this condition is a pretty standard condition that can be found on subdivisions, and it's really just to provide clarification for what can and cannot occur within a building envelope or development envelope.
Okay, thank you. The other drill down I want to do is that this was all approved before the Eastern Goleta Valley Community Plan was adopted. So when an applicant comes in and asks for a change to a map and we have a new general plan in place or a new community plan in place, just if you can confirm, if staff has to look at it or the commission has to consider it in light of the new policies adopted with the community planning in effect at the time we're taking a decision, right?
Chair Bridley, Commissioners, yes, that's correct. You would need to take into consideration the Eastern Goleta Valley Community Plan.
Okay, that makes it harder. All right, then, and as part of this application, I know Mr. Ramey is asking for a decision by the commission, but can you explain to me the kinds of conversations you have had with him about additional technical reports that might be helpful, or at what point would he have to provide those anyway?
Chair Bridley, Commissioners, sure. So when we sent out the first incompleteness letter on November 20th, we had indicated that we didn't have enough information to be able to support the project as it currently stood, but that if he wanted to proceed, that we would need a slope stability analysis and a biological report due to the environmentally sensitive habitat. So those are items that are still would be outstanding if the project moved forward. And then we had met in person with the applicant on November 25th, so about 5 days after the incompleteness letter was sent out, and discussed what was included in the incompleteness letter and what information was required for us to move forward if he was, we had indicated that we didn't see a basis to support the project at that time because of the policy inconsistencies, but also indicated that if he wanted to proceed, that we would need more information on the project description, the slope stability analysis, the biological report, and then we still would need materials that are required for filing a project under Chapter 21 under the subdivision code. And so some of those were submitted, and I believe some were not. We had also requested to clarify where easements were located on the property and to provide a title report. I believe he did provide a title report. And then we had indicated what the findings required for approval are. And I think the biggest one here is what changes in circumstance that would make any of the conditions of a parcel map no longer appropriate or necessary. And so we had requested information on how the applicant believed that finding could be made. And then at that meeting, there were differences. I was in that meeting. I supervised the prior planner on this project. In that meeting, there were differences that did not appear that could be resolved. And so the applicant requested that we move forward with a hearing rather than submit information that was requested in the incompleteness letter. So then subsequent to that, staff sent a follow-up email requesting kind of a more complete project description. And I've also attached Mr. Ramey's project description in the staff report. But we just have a certain format that we include in our staff reports to make it, to include all of the relevant information that staff needs for any type of project. So that was there. And then we did deem with that understanding that there were differences on the project and that the applicant wanted to move forward to the hearing. We did deem the project complete on January 10th of 2020. And then it came before your commission right about the time of COVID-19. And so because that was a kind of quasi-remote hearing, the applicant had requested that we wait until further time. And so that's why it's back before your commission right now.
Thank you, Ms. Rich. I really appreciate that. One last question. The applicant's done a really great job of giving us a lot of background information, and one of them in his rebuttal document was an exhibit of, I think, what he was planning on doing with the property, and maybe that's in the LUP application, but is that considered part of this file now? Because there's some ideas about grading on the property, which I think underlies his, and I definitely want to hear from Mr. Ramey, but my question for staff is are those site plan alternatives that are in color that Mr. Ramey provided in his rebuttal, are those considered part of the case file now?
Chair Briley, commissioners, now because they've been provided for the hearing, they would be considered part of this record. They hadn't been previously in the recorded map modification case file, but we have been in communication throughout the process with the planner that was working on the land use permit for the single family dwelling and garage. And I believe there are still some grading items that need to be sorted out for that permit.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes my questions, and I'm not seeing any other commissioner have any further. So that would lead us to our applicant presentation. Mr. Ramey, you're on. And I think we talked about 15 minutes. Didn't we talk about that?
I think that 15 minutes will be sufficient. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I don't have too much to say about Ms. Harper's presentation, other than I think that it confused things in that it seemed to conflate the construction that may or may not happen with the request to remove this particular condition. There's two separate things, but unfortunately, they're both referred to as the word project. And even though I'm pretty familiar with all the things she raised, I found it a little bit confusing there. I just wanted to mention that. I prepared a rebuttal to her staff report. Most of the information she presented now, the large majority of it is consistent with her staff report. I'm not going to go into the aspects that she raised again. I think that my rebuttal is very complete, and I think it addresses all the points she's raised, point by point. And what I want to do here is step back a little bit and give you an idea what this is going to mean for the future. I brought with me Jason Gotsis, who is the certified, excuse me, licensed professional civil engineer, who is the head of the office, local office of Ashley and Vance, and he has been working with me on issues such as the grading and stormwater management, which is actually quite a much bigger issue thing. So he'll be available if you have any technical questions which are beyond my expertise. So this first slide is just a rendering of what this house that we propose to build. And right now, I'm assuming that we're allowed to grade outside the building envelope for landscaping purposes and for stormwater removal purposes. And if we get that approval, which means leaving us in this condition, this is the house we'll be able to build. A key feature is that it's because of the grading, it's 2 feet lower than the current level. This makes the house have a lot less impact on my house, which would be to the left of where you're looking now, and my neighbor's house, that of Dr. Irwin Tyke. And so I think that this works to the benefit of myself as the owner, myself as a neighbor, and Mr. Tyke as well. It means that we won't be building a 2-story McMansion behemoth there, which dominates and backs up right against Mr. Tyke's property. So the key features is we did present rendering of this to the ABR. This, and there's some other ones too, but this is good enough for our purposes here. They seem quite enthusiastic about the design of the structure we intended. So by lowering the lot 2 feet with the grading, in a moment, I'll show you what the grading we really need looks like. It would, besides minimizing the views, it would increase the usable size of the lot by a fair amount because it would have a bigger flat spot. This would simply make it much better for purposes of landscaping, and simply it would improve the issue of stormwater management. So can you go to the next slide? Hello? I'm not hearing anyone.
So, David, okay, David, do you have the slide, David?
The next slide is grading dash alt.png. So
There we
okay,
go.
that's it. That's fine. Okay. Now, here we have a site that shows the property, the existing trees. It shows, you can see, I don't think I can point to it, but you can see the property line is the outer line. The building envelope is the inner line. It has this point at the end. And what, for landscaping purposes, we want to be able to grade along border between the where the house is at the building envelope to the property line at the north end. At that place, we expect to put, we'd like to put, retaining wall, and this would maintain the pattern of the neighborhood, each lot being one step down the lot to the north. At the same time, as I say, for aesthetics, landscape purposes, and for another purpose as well, top of the drawing, you'll see a pink area, and that would be an area that would be filled. That area right now has been infested with gophers for 40 years. It's quite loose. It should be recompacted, and eventually, if that doesn't happen, it'll have to be addressed in some more expedient way. Now, the county has never done sent a geologist out to the property, so they would not know this. And in fact, no county official, as far as I know, has visited the property in over 20 years. So I'm giving you this information because I think it's something you should know and you may not. So now there's another factor as well. Myself and Mr. Irwin, Mr. Teichman, the property owner at the end of the street, at the bottom of this, we don't get along. And one of the contributing factors has been the water comes down the shared driveway, and then it continues on to through this setback area, and then drains off the south onto the neighbor below, Mr. Cardonas. And although there's never been, in spite of some really heavy rain, serious issue, it's always a concern. And the construction of this house add 2,000 or 3,000 square feet of roof. And the current way of dealing with it has been that water that fell on the lot went towards the bottom into the common drainage passageway. What we want to do is build the roof in such a way so that the stormwater is directed up towards the pink area, where we have a lot more room to absorb it, and where we can drain it directly to the creek, which is just beyond the it's the planners. It's extremely difficult to get any kind of answer from the current planner as to what is permitted, not permitted, what's a driveway, what's not a driveway, and whether digging a ditch is permitted, whether landscape is permitted, whether all the underground utilities which is required have to be routed under the driveway as opposed to just digging a ditch in the most convenient place. This is the motivation for asking the condition to be all the things that the county requires and has an interest in, flood control, whatever, are addressed when the development plans are approved by the separate entities that do this. This oversight which they maintain is in no way related to this condition. The removal of this condition would not change one iota the amount of oversight that is applied here. So that's the long and the short of it here. What we want to do is to grade the north end out to the property line to make it flat and to improve the landscaping, and then extend a little bit, this is to make it flat, go all the way around, and then add this pink area of some fill. The estimate of this pink area is 0 to 5 feet, and the estimate of the blue area is probably an average, since the property is not quite flat now, it's probably an average grading of 2 feet. So that's where we aspire to be. That's what this condition in the lot and the planning committee, the planning developments department, total inability to explain or to make a definition of what's required is preventing us from executing this project this way. Now let's take one more look at the future. If they don't remove this condition, we have to find a way to live with this. So in this case, we see that the actual grading is limited to the building envelope. And because the topography is such, it kind of will probably end up with being a little berm around the edge. I think that I've put that there. So from a grading standpoint, it's pretty clear to see what the difference would be by comparing these two site plans. So this would also mean it's very difficult to get a vehicle in the backyard. Yard would be smaller, and this would in no way be better than the previous incarnation we just saw. As far as stormwater management, this setup makes it very, very difficult to implement the improvement that we want in the previous, that we show in the previous one by running the water to the west, and we would probably be forced to run it off to in its traditional path to the east, and then have it go with the possibility of, which has never occurred but could in the future, overflow into Mr. Teichman's property or create the kind of problems that we're concerned about with the property to the south, which belongs to Mr. Cardonas, who is, I think, a state employee. He's a very old guy, very nice guy. But this improvement in the stormwater management is probably not going to be available to us if this condition is not, if we're not relieved from this condition. So I think that sums up all I have to say. One other alternative is basically not to do any grading at all and not lower the house by 2 feet. That we could do, but that also benefits. That would make a bigger impact of the development on Mr. Teichman. Mr. Teichman, I say, I've never been able to see eye to eye on this. This certainly wouldn't help. But it would be doable and probably cheaper too. But nobody would benefit from this. And so that's a possibility that we might consider. I've always presumed that common sense and respect for rule of law would prevail at a hearing like this. And I still expect that. And so I'm hopeful you'll approve my application. And one final thing, the question of appeal has come up. I'm going to tell you right now, there will be no appeal in this decision. This is the body that contains, as I say, accomplished people that have common sense. And honestly speaking, I have more faith in this body than I do the politicians at the Board of Supervisors. And of course, as has been demonstrated, I have very little faith in the competence and goodwill of the employees of the planning department. So it's going to come down to the members here of this commission, and I'm putting all my faith in you. Thank you very much for listening to you, and I'm ready to take questions.
So, Mr. Ramey, do you want to have Mr. Gotsis to add anything to your presentation, or you just want to have him available for Q&A? Because right now you have 1 minute left. Okay.
No, well, I have nothing more to say. I only brought him to ask any question, to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so with that, does any member of the commission have questions for Mr. Ramey now? I am not seeing any then, and I think we've already covered my questions before. So with that, we would actually move on to our public comment time, and I would turn to Mr. Villalobos and ask if anyone has requested to speak.
Madam Chair, before we start calling on public speakers, I just wanted to point out to the commission that we did receive a couple of multi-page submittals yesterday from the neighbor, Erwin Teichman. They were largely photos, but technically more than 1 page in length, and I was wondering if the commission wanted to consider including those into the record at this time.
Very good reminder. Well, I actually did read them. So does anybody else want to make a motion? I would actually move to accept those into the record. Is there concurrence on that? It's okay if there's not. Commissioner Cooney?
I will move that we accept them. We've had them for a few days and have reviewed them.
Okay, then I would second that. And well, I guess we vote on that first, right? Mr. Villalobos?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Cooney?
Aye.
Commissioner Park?
Aye.
Commissioner Farini?
Aye.
Commissioner Blau? Commissioner Blau?
Commissioner Black? Uh-oh. Well, it sounds like it would carry 4 out. Is he there? Not soon. Okay, well, let's just say 4-0-1, right? Or 4-0, it did carry.
So, Madam
then
Chair,
we
you
will
were
go
a
back
yes
to-
then?
Yes, I was.
Okay, great. Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we would go on to our public comment items, and I think we can actually allow for 3 minutes. So we only have, I think, one speaker, Mr. Villalobos?
Madam Chair, yes, we did only have one speaker who had indicated that he wanted to speak to item number 1, but I suspect it's actually for the second item, and we do have a caller on the line, and I'm not quite sure what item that person would like to speak for. So perhaps if we can just take a minute to ask those speakers if they want to speak on this item or the next item.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I see Mr. Suding has his hand raised. Mr. Suding, if you would unmute yourself.
Hi, I would like to speak to item 2. I didn't have the agenda with me at the time that I entered the request to speak. That's item 2, please.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for clarifying. I appreciate that. And Madam Chair, I believe that our caller has left the meeting, so I believe unless anyone else who's on the line would like to speak to this item, if you could use the raised hand feature. Otherwise, I think that public comment for this item is we're done with.
Okay. Okay, then I think that closes our public comment, and that brings it back to the commission for consideration. And I have to apologize. I did want to ask the applicant's engineer just one question, if the commission will indulge me. Is Mr. Gotsis available?
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Gotsis. So I know you've worked with Mr. Ramey on this. Have you done any kind of soil stability analysis, or in your professional opinion, are you thinking that's just a matter of writing it on paper, or have you taken a look at his new site plan for the LUP case, which is kind of the basis of wanting to drop this condition, or how far are you on slope stability issues related to that area?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, we are civil engineering consultants. Slope stability analysis would not be in our scope. That usually falls on a geologist or a geotechnical engineer. We had just been hired to do preliminary grading and drainage analysis and documentation for the project.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that, Mr. Gotsis. Okay, so with that, we're back to deliberations. And I know it's the second district, but does any other commissioner have some comments they want to add? No, I'd love to hear from you before I may have to make a motion. Wow. Commissioner Park, thank you. Commissioner Park? Yeah, I think you're muted.
I don't mean to go before you. If you want to go first, it is your district.
I benefit first from hearing from others, so please proceed.
Okay, I'll go for it. I'm a little perplexed by all this. One thing, I at the first hearing of this, when I was feeling crankier than I am today, I made the somewhat cranky comment that I didn't really appreciate a staff report that doesn't tell us why the applicant wants what they want. And here we are again today, which doesn't tell us what the applicant wants. And the applicant spent a lot of money paying for staff to write the reports. That's the way the thing works. But be that as it may, now we know what the applicant wants. And it seems like a very practical request. He wants to be able to do some drainage improvements that are outside the building envelope, and feels that this number 15 would bar that. And I think Ms. Harris confirmed that in my questions. And if I had to choose immediately between staff's recommendation of denying the application or what Mr. Ramey has asked for, to grant the application, I'd vote for Mr. Ramey. But what I don't understand is why there can't be some middle ground that's worked out so that Mr. Ramey's project that he's described to us gets through staff. They get to process it. It kind of goes through the normal things, and then it comes to us where we're looking at a project with some very specific reasons for doing it, and we say yay or nay. So I'd like to hear more from other commissioners and staff or anyone else who can tell me maybe it makes sense to continue this some weeks or month or something and get this fine-tuned a little better. So how's that for my technical comment?
Thank you, Commissioner Park. I think Commissioner Blau, did you want to add something?
Sure. I think I understand why he's asking to remove the condition. It was one that was put on there that was probably inappropriate. It had unintended consequences. I believe there is enough control from the county as this project goes forward that it will identify all the adverse conditions may be affected by his drainage work. We don't need to do it again. What you have here is just a statement that was put in that map. It doesn't allow any flexibility in him building the project, which is kind of crazy, I think. I always dislike those kind of conditions. At the same time, if what he's asking for is reasonable and it is a better project than complying with the condition, why would you not do that? So if he can satisfy flood control, the building department, planning, by encroaching or by going outside the building envelope, so be it. Not like he's asking to build a house on a 20% slope. He wants to do some grading work and some other things in that area, which by his demonstration today, improves the project. So I'm in favor of removing condition 15. I don't think it's necessary. There's enough other conditions and requirements, as far as development, that it would adequately protect the public.
Thank you, Commissioner Blau. Did anyone else want to jump in here? Because I do have some ideas. Commissioner Cooney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not so concerned with the goal of Mr. Ramey on this project as I am the process that he is following. A map condition, and we've imposed those conditions on many, many projects because what we want to do is ensure that development in the future on a particular lot is in accordance with all of the concerns that could be raised at that time but are not presently because there's no development plan on that particular portion of the lot. And that happened here. The condition was added a long time ago by the Planning Commission, and I think the process is more like you can suggest removal of a condition like this in conjunction with and upon approval of all of the other conditions that are required that cause the condition to be imposed in the first place. So, there are a number of ways that have been suggested to deal with this. One is not to simply deny Mr. Ramey's motion, but to continue the matter and see if he and staff can work out a satisfactory process where he submits the information needed to show the commission that condition 15 is no longer required. I'm happy to support any new project, and it sounds like he's got the bones of it. But you don't come to the Planning Commission separately and say, if condition 15 were removed, this is my project. I think he has to submit all of those studies necessary, and then staff could come and say, as a condition of approving this, we need to remove condition 15. So I see it happening. I see it evolving, but if I had to vote today, I would not vote to remove the condition because we don't have the compliance that makes me comfortable with doing that today.
Could I mention something here?
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Ramey. This is actually Planning Commission deliberation. So
Oh, okay.
we're going
All right.
to continue with our discussion. So I see Mr. Wilson's hand raised. Do you want to add anything, Secretary Wilson?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, I'm just pointing out what is before you today. Staff had presented a staff report with findings for denial. If the Commission wants to take a different action, it would require a continuance to come back with findings that would support a different action. However, just hearing the deliberations and not to cut into the middle of the deliberations, I think where staff is at, and they can answer for themselves, is aligned with Commissioner Cooney and what Commissioner Park is suggesting, is that what staff is really requesting of the applicant is to work with us to provide the information that we're requesting to get to the findings that would support removing this condition of map modification. But I think there is a compromise. I think Commissioner Park and Commissioner Cooney has provided a direction that staff would be willing to pursue. We would just ask
Okay, and you know what? Right. And let me just, I'm going to wrap it up here because this is the hazard of having a planner on your commission, is that I actually disagree with Mr. Ramey quite strongly about the haphazard addition of condition 15. The reason condition 15 was added to that map was because you did not have geological studies and extensive analyses, and you got through on a mitigated ND that relied on no construction outside of that building envelope, period. So if you had come to staff with a slope stabilization report, a biological assessment of the area that's going to be a creek where you want to do landscaping and extend the building envelope, if you had given them all of those information, then they would have come to staff and said, we can probably recommend this because we have the evidence and the technical reports that allow us to recommend to the commission to make those findings. So right now, I'm not inclined to vary from staff's position because I would like to see those reports so that I can make those findings. And therefore, I'm really leaning for what Mr. Cooney already articulated. I think the process is exactly how it would go. And I've seen applicants do this where instead of front-loading costs in getting out of a planning commission consideration, they accept a recorded envelope, and then they realize later that what that really means. And it means that you can't even build a deck outside of it sometimes. So it's not an unusual condition. It's a standard condition, and it's often used, as it was in this case, to actually subvert a deeper CEQA document in approving the map. So I think the process is completely right on. And saying that, I think I would completely approve his revised site plan. We just need to have the reports in first. So my motion might be more like to continue it, to have the applicant work with staff and talk about doing those reports. Get a geotechnical engineer. Tell us how that slope is going to be, stay in place with your new building envelope. What is that really going to look like? And also, I think you have to do a biological assessment of that because it's in a Egregious Creek. I don't know what habitat is down there really, and I don't think anybody does. So, and that is normally I think that is actually what staff has been asking you to do. And instead of doing that in the process that they were asking for, you were hoping that the planning commission would just look at it and trust you and say, yeah, that looks like a good plan. So I'm giving you two things, Mr. Ramey. I'm saying I think it's a good plan. I think it has merit, but I couldn't approve it today without those technical reports and staff support in the findings. So I would actually, at this point, I would ask Mr. Ramey if he's willing to accept a continuance to continue working with staff and develop those reports that staff asked for. Because if you return to the commission on a time-specific date without staff support, you're going to be exactly where you are now. And the crazy thing is, you're going to have to do these reports anyway. I think that you were hoping, Mr. Ramey, that because the building official or because planning, when they approve the map or they approve your building envelope, I was going to have to need the reports then, that we don't need them now. That's the rollback that I'm hoping you're understanding now. So my question is, my motion would be for a continuance, and I guess I'm looking for a second. And as soon as we get the motion on the floor, Mr. Ramey, I'd like to hear if that's acceptable with you and if you're willing to do that. Is there a second to my motion for continuance? Commissioner Park was up first. Actually, Commissioner Blau was up first.
I'm going to comment on your motion after you get a second.
Okay. Commissioner Park?
Actually, I will second your motion and then comment on it. That's all right.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Blau, second. Go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and support your motion to do the continuance, although for me, it's not necessary. I think all those things are going to have to occur before he gets his permit to go build the project. And I think what he's doing, what I'm guessing what he's doing is right now, the way the condition reads, he can't do that. He can't go forward and get you those reports, staff the reports, and all those conditions because there's a condition that says you can't do it. Staff does not have the ability to approve him to do any work outside that building envelope because the condition reads that way. And what I'm saying is, he has to do all those things you just described in order to get the permit to build the project, except he can't do it because the condition's there. I'm willing to remove the condition and rely upon staff to get all the information before they approve the actual project. Now, if you want him to get the information so you can approve it, I'm okay with that. It's not necessary for me. I'll let staff approve it once he gets that information. But if you want to see it yourself, before it's approved, before you remove the condition, I guess it's okay. It's being through back. Like, even if he got all the information for you, without your approval, he can't get it done.
I appreciate that. Commissioner Park?
I am like I thank you and Commissioner Cooney, and like I said earlier, inclined to support a continuance. It would help me if we had a little bit more specificity as to when that would be a continued to. But also, I'd like to hear more from Mr. Wilson on how staff could respond and what it could do in this continuance period. You know, could they address the concerns that Commissioner Blau has just stated, for example?
Mr. Wilson, did you want to respond before Mr. Cooney adds in?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd actually defer to Supervising Planner Ms. Harris. I think she could provide an outline of what we would be looking for and how we could move forward to get to a position that the Planning Commission could support on this project. And so, Ms. Harris, if Madam Chair would be so inclined, I would like to have Ms. Harris respond to that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
We also had hand up, but Commissioner Cooney, you're okay listening to staff on this one last clarification. Ms. Harris?
Chair Bradley, Commissioners, I'm just making sure that the Commission is aware of what would need to occur. So it would be a slope stability analysis, a biological report that addresses the environmentally sensitive habitat on the property, and then a slope. We would need to understand where slopes are 20% or greater outside of the building envelope due to the environmental resource management element and the Eastern Goleta Valley Community Plan policy. So we would need a slope map as well. If we get those items, and I would defer to Mr. Ramey on how quickly he could get those reports back to us, then we could look at a hearing date after that.
Thank you. Ms. Harris. Commissioner Cooney?
Well, I was going to second the motion to continue the matter a long time ago, but I would just observe that we need to work this back into the system. We've got right now we could just accept the findings we have before us for denial and let staff and the applicant work it and put it back on the agenda at some future time. What we're doing to help Mr. Ramey is proposing to continue the matter so that he has a date certain when he can come back and do this. This would give him a chance to get all the reports in. I think it's going to take a couple of months, frankly, if not more, So I'm willing to support a continuance. I suggested it rather than just a motion to deny, which would be my backup.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooney. So at this time, if the commission will indulge me, I want to hear from Mr. Ramey if he is understanding this discussion and willing to work with staff on providing those reports, because that would be critical for them to return the item to us with an alternative recommendation to support it, and then you'll be on your way. So, Mr. Ramey?
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple comments here. One is there's some information which is maybe relevant, but not apparent to the commission members. This project, based on some drawings, passed a conceptual review from the ABR. Next step is to prepare more documents and submit these to the ABR again in a process called preliminary review. Now, what should happen, or what would make sense to happen, is the landscape plan, the grading plan that I provided, which is one that I want to do, would be included in those preliminary, in the submission, the ABR for a preliminary review. But the planner will not accept that and pass it to the ABR because it violates condition 15. So
right.
here I am in a catch-22. I need to do what you want me to do, or to propose what the ABR, to show the ABR what we want to do, means that we have to eliminate condition 15 or get relief from it. But at the same time, until we get relief from it, we can't present the documents to them. So this is what led me to this, and that's how we came to where we are. So I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do.
So, Mr. Ramey, I'm going to try explaining it one more time. You have to do reports to support staff in making a recommendation to us to support the map modification to let you do things outside of that building envelope. Because right now, they cannot tell us findings that I can hang my hat on for consistency with the Eastern Valley Community Plan to approve a map modification that disallows that restriction. You're going to have to do those studies sooner or later. To say that you have to do the studies just so you can go to BAR is not the correct path. Planner won't accept them for BAR review until you have the map modification solved. Because he's not going to spend time at the BAR looking at something that doesn't comply with the map. The planner can't do that. So the choice today is for us to continue it with the request to you, the applicant, to work with staff to provide the reports of staff needs, which Ms. Harris outlined, so that you can return to our commission and stay on the agenda, and you can return to us as soon as possible. Let me finish. Or you can accept an alternative motion that we might make for denying the case. So it's either continuance or denial today.
Well, I guess that's an easy choice. But anyway, I'll work with Ms. Harris to see what we have to prepare in what format to get it done. The planner, which has been reviewing the project, is basically said there's no way that we can do this. So maybe I'll have better luck with Ms. Harris, and so we'll see.
Chair Bradley, commissioners, I just want, if you don't mind, I would just like to reiterate what we do need. So it's a slope stability analysis. It's the environmentally sensitive habitat. It's a biological report related to that riparian area. We need a slope analysis that identifies all slopes greater than 20% on the property. I am certainly happy to work with Mr. Ramey, but the planner for the LUP, this information is needed to remove the condition. And until that condition is removed, the land use permit really can't go any further. So that's why that permit is on hold until this can be resolved.
Okay, so I think it's really just accelerating reports that you'd have to do anyway, right? So with all that discussion, Commissioner Park, did you want to add anything more?
Yeah, I with all due respect to Mr. Ramey, I don't think we need his permission to make a motion to deal with our agenda, which is to continue it. And I would think he would see the wisdom of a motion like that. And I think that staff would see the wisdom of a motion like that. And I also don't think it's necessarily continuance or denial. There would be a vote, and the other commissioners might vote to approve it. I don't know. But I think the continuance is a good idea, regardless of what anybody else thinks about it, other than the 5 people on this commission.
Okay, so with that, I think we're ready to call the question. I think there's a motion and a second for a continuance of the item. Are we thinking that we can do it to a date certain somewhere because I do think it's going to take several months for him to work with staff and get those reports completed. I would actually look to November for a continuance date. Or
I think that's pretty quick. I think it would take longer, but go ahead.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was going to recommend December 9th. That gives 2 months for him to prepare the reports, and it gives staff a couple weeks or a month to prepare the necessary staff report memo and docket it. So December 9th actually gives us, if we get the reports earlier, then, we can analyze them, but I'd recommend December 9th.
I think that's a great recommendation. And it sounds like Mr. Ramey's feeling comfortable with that too. Not that we need his permission, but this is kind of a working together thing. So with that, we have the motion, we have the second, and we have the clarity on what has to happen during that time. So I would ask Mr. Villalobos to do the roll call vote.
Commissioner Cooney.
I beg the chair's indulgence. I just want to add one thing to my vote in favor of the motion, and that is that Mr. Ramey suggested we have a problem with our staff, and so he wanted to bring the matter to the commission. I personally have worked with Ms. Harris on several projects over the years. She is one of our best planners, also one of the most practical. So I think this project will be in good hands, and when it comes back to us, it'll either be solved or we'll be told it can't be solved. So my vote's in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooney. I totally concur with that. Mr. Villalobos, why don't you continue?
Commissioner Park.
I want to thank Mr. Cooney for his comments about staff, and I will also support the motions. My vote is aye.
Commissioner Freeney.
Aye.
Commissioner Blau.
Your hand raised.
Pardon? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to comment also in that I'm going to vote for the motion, but as Ms. Harris just said, she can't process the land use permit unless we remove condition 15. That's the point. I think it's probably expeditious that we go ahead and continue it, get the reports done. He can come back to us. He's got a final approval, but he doesn't need that. If we would remove condition 15, as Ms. Harris just said, they could continue to process the land use permit. So having said that, I'm going to go aye on the motion, but all you're doing is, I think, frustrating the process. Anyway, so go forward with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Blau.
Chair Bridley.
I don't think. Aye.
A motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ramey. Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I didn't hear Freeney's name called. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, that's true. That's true. I'm sorry.
No, he voted. Madam Chair, he voted aye. Yep.
Okay. You're just so swift. All right. Thank you, everybody. Do we want to take a 5-minute break, I think, before the next item? Is that enough? Secretary Wilson and everybody? Yeah. 5 minutes before the next item. Thank you. Okay.